I'm Sarah McKenzie, the author of Teaching from Rest, A Homeschooler's Guide to Unshakable Peace, and the creator of the Read-Aloud Revival. And we are going to talk about homeschool plans. So I don't know how many of you have seen my homeschool planning posts. It's a whole series of posts where I kind of walk you through my own methods of thinking about a new school year. Courtney, would you mind dropping the link in the chat there? But it's amongstlovelythings.com/planning, and that's where you'll see my whole series of posts on how I go from looking ahead to the new year, thinking about what it is that we're actually going to want to do in the coming year, and getting a big picture vision all the way through to making a plan. And so that's what you'll find there in the planning post at amongstlovelythings.com/planning. And then today what I thought we would do here on video is I'd show you my curriculum picks for 2016 to 2017. We all want to see in each other's plans, right? Like, I'm always dying to know what my friends are using. And so I thought I'd just show you what we're using. So this school year I have a 9th grader, I have a 7th grader, a 5th/6th grader, a preschooler, and twin 3-year-olds. When I say it like that, it sounds crazy, right? A high schooler, a middle schooler, elementary schooler, a preschooler, and toddlers. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But I'm really excited about the new school year, and so I thought I'd walk you through what I had, what I picked, and what we're going to be using. We aren't actually starting until after Labor Day. That's when school started around here, and I'm not about to have my kids start school before the neighbor kids. So, here is how we're going to do this. If you need to hop off at any point or you want to catch this later, it'll be a replay on my Facebook page. Just click on videos and you can hit replays and see it there. We'll also have a video replay for you at sarahmckenzie.tv. Now there's a whole bunch of forms I'm going to be showing you that I use when I'm planning, and I am not going to totally walk you through exactly how I make those or what they're for, because I've done that before. And so you can watch those videos where I'll show you exactly what I use and how I build them and all that good stuff at sarahmckenzie.tv. It's called the How I Homeschool series. They were originally recorded on Periscope, but the replays are up for you there. So that's a heads up. Everything that you need, if you have a question about how I do something, you can throw it in the chat. My right-hand lady, Courtney, is there, and she can help you out. Courtney Garrison there in the comments. And also, most everything you can find about planning from me is at that original link, amongstlovelythings.com/planning. Okay, so I am going to tell you a little bit about how I chose curriculum. So I do it a little differently because we do 2 co-ops, and before you think I'm absolutely crazy, I'm kind of like the slacker co-op mom. So I'm not the co-op mom that runs it or like teaches a lot of classes. Everybody just lets me bring my toddlers and hang out in the nursery and chat with my friends. So it's not like I'm doing a ton of teaching or organizing or gathering stuff for co-ops. But co-ops are really, really important to me. And one thing I have realized over years of homeschooling is I'm an extrovert, and I really need to be around other people, and several of my kids are extroverts as well, not all of them, and it's just been a really important piece of that. We really have a high value in our family for learning and community, and so co-ops are important. We're in 2 co-ops, one that meets all day Thursday, and then one that meets for about a half a day on Friday, and then we also have a group of friends that come over once a week to do some group learning. So that sounds crazy, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that. So the way I can make co-ops work for me, because I know a lot of people go, oh my gosh, how do you get all your homeschooling done and co-ops? But the co-ops actually take off work for me at home. So if they didn't, we wouldn't be a part of them because it wouldn't work, right? Like if you're going to 2 days of co-ops, let's say, and you're just doing all enrichment, or you're not being able to take any subjects completely off your docket because you just can't, then the co-ops become kind of a burden and something that takes away from your learning. Our co-ops, I definitely let take entire subjects off of our plate. So how I started this year's homeschool planning is I just looked at what was being offered at co-op first. That's the first thing I did. We're in one big, large, very organized co-op. There's hundreds of kids in this co-op. There's 40 some odd Catholic families in this group, And I don't have a whole lot to say about what gets taught there, so I just look about what's being offered for my kids' ages, and I'm like, okay, I'm not teaching those things. Those things are already being taught. So, for example, at that co-op this year, my kids, depending on the child, because they're all different ages, of course, are basically getting history, writing, and science. Kind of not all across the board, but more or less. So if a child's getting science at co-op, I don't then teach science at home. Or if they're doing history at co-op, I don't then teach history at home. So that's one thing to know. And the second co-op, it's a much smaller group at our church, and just a few families. I have a lot to say in what we're going to learn there. And again, it's something that takes things off my plate. But I would still say we have a very high value for just the social element of co-ops and being in community with other homeschoolers and making friends, because friendship is really important to all of us. So that's where I start. So when I show you what I've picked, you're going to go like, she is not teaching hardly anything. Well, the great thing is that my co-ops actually take quite a bit of the schooling off of me, and so you'll see that here. I want to make sure that okay, so great. I think that's it. I know. This is fun. And yeah, if you're having trouble, you might have to go to Chrome. I've heard lots of people having trouble watching Facebook Live in Safari, so you may want to try Google Chrome, or you can watch it on replay. Okay, so let me just walk you through what we've chosen. So the first thing I do after I've looked at the co-op schedule and realized, okay, these subjects are being covered by these kids. I'll actually show you this scribble mess. I wasn't going to show you this part because it's so messy, but this is really what it looks like. So the first thing I do is it's all in pencil. I'm not even sure how well you're going to be able to see it. Is like a chart where I write down like the subjects or things that I know I want to teach, and each child, and then I just start filling it in. So like, for example, under science, I know that my 9th grader is taking physical science at one of our co-ops. My 7th grader is taking botany, and my 5th, 6th graders taking astronomy. So I just plug those in. So now I know what we're doing. So I start by filling in the co-op. And once I've got all those filled in, then I know, okay, this is what else I have left to figure out outside of co-op. And the first thing I do is figure out what we're going to all study as a family. Now, we call this, you probably heard of morning time. Oh, my stuff is backwards when I show you. Okay, that's good to know. That's going to be frustrating when I'm showing you stuff. Okay, I'll just have to explain it all to you. Thank you for letting me know that, Kristen. That's helpful. So I figure out what we're all going to learn together. We do a morning time. We actually call it symposium, but if you're familiar with Pam Barnhill's podcast, Your Morning Basket, or the idea of morning time from Cindy Rollins, it's basically group learning time where you start the day. And I did a podcast episode with Pam Barnhill on Your Morning Basket. We can very likely pop that. Actually, Courtney, would you mind popping that link to that podcast in the chat, if you don't mind? We do really, really simple morning times, probably simpler than most anybody else that I know. We don't have like some big beautiful spreadsheet. I'm not rotating through a lot of subjects. Morning time, super simple. What I thought through this year was, at the end of the year, what am I going to wish we had spent more time doing? Especially because we're in so many co-ops, my kids are learning a lot of subjects separately from one another. We're not doing like all the same science or all the same history. Especially since my oldest is in high school this year, that dynamic of like whole family learning has changed a little bit. So I thought, okay, at the end of the year, what am I going to wish we had spent more time on? And there was a couple of things that came to mind right away. One of them is faith, and the other one was kind of this American culture piece. My kids are super into current events and the election and things that they're seeing on the news or hearing about. And also, we have never done modern American history, and they're at pretty good ages to start tackling that since we haven't yet. And so what I decided to do was figure out what could we do for our 45-ish, half an hour to 45-ish minute morning time, where I could do it with the 9th, 7th, and 6th grader all together, that we could do something where it was like discussion-based, relaxed, but really worthwhile. And so the first thing you need to know is that, yes, I have a 4-year-old and 2 3-year-olds, and you're thinking, how do you do that? I turn on the TV. I should not be saying this online. I'm going to get like all my cool mom cards taken away from me. I turn on the TV. And we do this because it's really important for me to have a half an hour or 45 minutes of focused time with my older kids where we can have good conversation, we can ask questions, we can read aloud, we can pray, we can talk about things, those big, important, juicy kind of conversations, without all the day distraction of TV. With all the toddlers, because we are, of course, dealing with the toddler distractions all day long. And so we'll turn on Signing Time or Blue's Clues or something for half an hour, 45 minutes, a little bit longer sometimes if we're having a really great discussion. And the way that works is that the toddlers know it's coming and they know their TV hour is coming. And so it's like when it becomes part of our rhythm, basically. So let me tell you how this works. In the morning, we start school around 9 o'clock, and this next school year, I'm turning things a little bit around. I used to start with morning time and then go into independent work, but what I found is that turning that TV off for the toddlers and then getting them to be good enough where the older kids can rotate watching them became really hard and really tricky. So we're changing that up this year. At 9 o'clock, I'll start working one-on-one with one of my kids. I'm actually going to start with my fifth, sixth grader who needs a little help with things like writing and spelling and math and all that good stuff. And so my older girls who are, well, pretty soon they'll be 15 and 13, they'll watch the preschoolers, they'll read to them, take them outside, go for a walk, do Play-Doh or watercolors or something, while I'm working with my fifth or sixth grader. We'll work for like 45 minutes or an hour, and then we'll rotate, and I'll start working with the seventh grader one-on-one while the other two kids are hanging out with the young kids. That will go on until about 10:30, and that's just it. I'm not really working with my high schooler one-on-one in the mornings this year. That's not the plan anyway. And so then at about 10:30, that will be movie time, and we'll tell the toddlers it's movie time, go sit and watch, and then I'll take all my big kids into the schoolroom, and we will do our morning time symposium. And we'll do that for about an hour. I have it marked off anyway for an hour until about 11:30 when we'll get ready for lunch. So by lunchtime, I'll have had one-on-one with each of my children who need it, big kids who need it, and morning time with my big kids. Does anybody have questions about that before I tell you what we chose for morning time? Because I feel like I'm going a little too fast, which is normal. I do think it works better to do more, spend like 20 minutes or something with your littlest kids. If you have a hard time if you have toddlers and you're like, I need to be able to spend one-on-one time with my big kids, if you can give your littlest kids like some good time on the front end, like 20 minutes on the floor, reading picture books and building with blocks, then they feel like their love tank is filled up a little bit more, and it's easier to pass them off to the other kids while you're working one-on-one with. That's how I do it anyway, and it does help. It does seem to help. It's not always perfect, and a lot of times we have a 3-year-old crying outside the bed, outside the schoolroom door, and then we take care of that as it comes. But yes, exactly. Starting with the youngest is really, really helpful. So yes, that would be around 8:30ish. Thank you, Jessica. Around 8:30, I'll make sure. If I haven't done that yet, I will make sure I'm on the floor with the little people, filling their buckets up, filling up their love tanks, and then moving on. Okay, so for morning times symposium this year, we decided to do, I'm calling it American Culture, and we're doing a combination of like American modern history and current events. And this is very conversational, lots of reading aloud and then talking about it. And that's basically my favorite way to teach. So what I did is I got Beautiful Feet's Modern American and World History Pack. This is for 5th to 8th graders. You can find it at bfbooks.com. And basically it's going to walk us through modern American history using really great literature. We're not going to read everything that's in this pack. We're definitely not going to read it all out loud. I would never have time for that because it's a lot of books. I have the whole stack here, but there's no way I can pick it all up, so I'll just show you a few. Basically, the way Beautiful Feet Books works is they tell you, I'll show you, I guess you can't really see it because it's mirror image, but they give you like a lesson that says, for example, read chapters 13 and 14 in The Perilous Road, and then it gives you some discussion points or ways to converse about what you just read. And so we're going to be using this as a framework. We're not going to be following it letter for letter. but we're just going to use it as a framework and kind of a which order to read which books in. And then a great start for discussion questions, especially like if I'm having mama brain and I can't think of anything great to ask my kids about what we just read or what they've been reading, or if they're reading a book that I haven't yet but it's on the list. That will be a great way for me to have conversations with them. So there's like a lot of wonderful books in this pack, things like The Little Writers, 20 and 10, Rascal by Sterling North, Genevieve Foster is one of my favorites. So these all come with that Modern American and History pack. And like I said, we're just going to pick a few of them to read aloud. And then some of the other ones I'm going to hand my kids and say, read this and come talk to me when you're done. Or they'll each read it and then we'll talk about it as a group. Just very, very relaxed, conversational. Let's tackle the things in history that have happened in modern American history we haven't talked about yet, which we haven't really much. We just started talking about World War II more in our home. And in addition to that history piece, we'll also be following the election and talking about all the craziness of that. And we'll be talking about things like current events. My kids are already, because of their ages, you know, between 11 and 15, they're asking me about things that are happening in the news. And so we're just going to be talking about it. So we may, if someone comes to me in the morning and says, Mom, explain to me what's happening in such and such a place, we may just ditch the whole plan for modern history reading that day and just sit there and talk about what's happening in that part of the world. So completely just the time of day where I'm pouring into my big kids and we have time set aside to have good conversations about things that matter. That's what we're going. Oh, thank you. Courtney threw in a link to my quick start guide to great conversations with your kids. That's amongstlovelythings.com/5 questions. It's there in the chat. And those are 5 open-ended questions that I use all the time to have really great conversations with my kids in a completely organic, relaxed way. We have some really deep, awesome conversations using those. Do I have a news source that I use? Not a reliable one that I would want to, not a reliable one. I'd actually be really curious if you guys have good recommended resources to throw them in the chat there, because I'd be curious too. I know CNN has a student current events kind of portal, but I don't know how reliable it is. And so I'll be using it to like get ideas. We're also going to be, I'm like deciding if I want to jump ahead this far. We're also going to be studying logic this year, and I'll explain when we're doing that later. But I imagine that what we're using in informal logic is going to be really helpful as we're talking through the election and other things in current events and history. So great, there's some good recommendations happening in the chat. And Araceli says that guide lives in her morning binder. That 5 questions guide. That's fantastic. Yeah, I love those 5 questions because you can ask those 5 questions absolutely about any book or any story or anything they saw on TV or a commercial or absolutely anything, any current event, and have a fantastic conversation. So they're my favorite questions to ask. Also because you don't have to have like a guide, or you could be in the car and those 5 questions become a habit of open-ended questions you can have conversations with your kids about. Am I adding things to supplement Beautiful Feet? I'm not, but I'm not really teaching it as a history class. My kids are doing history at co-op. I think you absolutely could use it as a 100% history class. I'm just going to be picking from it. I know we're not going to be doing everything in it, and I'm seeing it more as like a humanities, American culture type class. Do I have morning time on co-op days? No. So we only do morning time Monday through Wednesday. That's it. Thursday and Friday, no morning time. In fact, Thursday and Friday, everything I'm telling you as far as like what our schedule looks like is off because we do co-op. Yeah. Okay, the other thing we're going to be doing in morning time is working through Father Barron's Catholicism DVD set. We're Catholic, and I have been wanting to watch the Catholicism DVD series forever, and so we're going to watch them all together. It's like 10 hours, I think, ish, of DVDs that articulate and show the beauty of our faith in our church, and so that's what we're going to be watching. Other years we've done things like read through missionary stories, saints stories, or other kind of religious read-alouds, which are fantastic. This year we're just going to go for the DVDs. And The way I tend to do this is, like I said, this morning time is only a half an hour to 45 minutes. So we'll either have a conversation that has to do with our whole history, American culture studies, or we'll watch a Catholicism movie, or we'll do our faith stuff. We won't do both. My morning time is so simple. We gather in a room, we sing the doxology, we sing a hymn, and I haven't chosen our hymns for this year, but really it's totally not like fancy. All we do, I pick a hymn from our church that I want the kids to be able to sing without looking at the book in church. And we just sing that hymn every time we do morning time for 8 weeks or something. And then that's it. And then that like we just sing it together in the morning. We'll recite our memory work, which last year we started working through the Sermon on the Mount, and I had planned to continue to memorize the Sermon on the Mount, except that one of our co-ops added quite a bit of Bible memory work. So I think we'll just be practicing our co-op Bible memory work. All of that, doxology, hymn, Bible memory work, 8 minutes tops, right? Then we move on to our one other thing, either American culture or Catholicism. Does that make sense? And that will last about 45 minutes or an hour or so, and then that's it. And then we're done with morning time for the day. Totally conversational, like I said, very discussion-based, very relaxed, and definitely try and do it without the toddlers if we can make it happen, because then it's a lot more relaxed for all of us. Okay, so let me tell you what I'm using for each of my kids then. So that's all we're doing all together as a family. I'll start with my 9th grader. High school, right? Everybody's freaked out about high school. I was kind of freaked out about high school myself until I really started looking at what it takes. Where did I put that? This is what actually a school day looks like. Mom saying, where did I put that? Here it is. Okay. I got this book. It's probably backwards for you. It's called Finishing Well by Kim Baumgartel. I don't know how to say her last name. I got it on Amazon. This is a book on homeschooling your high school student. I purchased this one because a good friend of mine knows her in real life and has been to her seminars and likes her, as well as she's in Washington State, which is where I live, and so her advice is very tailored to Washington State law, so really helpful for me. If you are looking for help figuring out how to plan high school and how to do transcripts and all that good stuff, I have a couple of suggestions for you. One is Lee Binns, who's the Home Scholar, so it's just homescholar.com or maybe thehomescholar.com. And then Janice Campbell from Everyday Education is a friend and colleague of mine, and she has a book on high school transcripts, and I love Janice. She's wonderful. And so I found getting a book on what it takes to homeschool high school and reading this through when my oldest was in middle school just reduced my anxiety a ton, because I realized it was not nearly the rocket science that everybody makes you think it is. It's really just keeping on what you're doing and making the content, of course, quality match their age developmental level and expecting a little more from them. But it's not like, okay, you homeschool and then all of a sudden they get to high school and everything changes. It doesn't need to be that way. And that's definitely what I saw when I was reading through this and when I've been reading through a lot of Lee Binns' work and talking to Janice Campbell at conferences and other moms who have homeschooled through high school. It doesn't have to be as intimidating as you let's see. Oh, it paused. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay, so all that said, my anxiety levels come down a ton about high school because I've realized it's not nearly as impossible as I thought it was. And so I'll tell you what we're doing. At co-op, Audrey's my fifth, well, she'll be 15 soon. Isn't that weird? 15. Okay. She's going to drive soon, which I know is supposed to make me feel old, but I just keep thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to be able to do all my grocery shopping like really soon. And she's excited about that. Okay, so Audrey is doing, at co-op, she is doing medieval history and writing. Now, this is a 2-credit class that they're offering at our big, very organized co-op. They use Mother of Divine Grace. They already have their own curriculum plan. They sent me the book list, which is probably what you saw if you saw pictures of me talking about this Facebook Live. They sent me the whole book list. It's basically a lot of medieval reading, like Beowulf, and I'm trying to find it, but it's not in here. Or actually, but it is. It's probably under the right divider. I'm not usually this organized, so I organized myself before I hopped on, and now I don't know where anything is. Beowulf, The Song of Roland, Ballad of the White Horse, Murder in the Cathedral, the Magna Carta, Don Quixote, all that good stuff. I am not teaching this class. I had very optimistic plans to read along with her last year, but reality has caught up with me a little bit. And if I can read maybe Don Quixote with her, I probably will. But I'm not putting that pressure on myself. This is a big part of why we go to co-ops and why I love outsourcing, is so that I don't have to be all things to my all of my children. And I love that my kids get the experience of a teacher who has a completely different style than I do, who's maybe not quite as relaxed as I am, who have a little bit firmer deadlines and a just different way of approaching education and approaching a lesson. And so I think that's really valuable. And so she's going to be doing, it's a 2-credit medieval European history class. They're using the syllabus from Mother of Divine Grace. Sorry, I'm going back to see what else she's doing. She's doing Algebra 1. You all want to know what I use for math, right? Except I'm so not inspiring here. And as long as Andrew Kern is not watching, I can admit that we use Saxon. My oldest 2 daughters, my 9th grader and my 7th grader, are using Saxon. We actually have a math tutor for them. If you want to know about how I decided that we needed a math tutor and how I basically like wrap my mind around when we needed it and how to go about that, there is a video, a Periscope I did on that. That's at sarahmckenzie.tv, and you can get the whole juicy details on that. But my 9th grader and my 7th grader use a math tutor, so I don't do any math teaching for them anymore, and they use Saxon. So that's 3 credits I've named, right? So math and the medieval history and writing are 2 credits. She's also doing physical science at co-op, so again, it's another one of those things where the co-op just takes it off my plate. You're going to hear this a lot with my high schooler. I'm not actually teaching her anything outside of our whole family learning and getting to be her comrade, you know, like her support as she's taking these classes. We're outsourcing a lot of them. So medieval history and writing, algebra, physical science. She wants to take French. She's done Latin. She did 3 years of Latin, 4 years of Latin. She took the National Latin exam this last year, and I told her in high school they get to pick any language they want to learn, and she wants to do French, so we ordered Rosetta Stone, and she's going to be doing that using the full year curriculum. Can count as a high school credit if you get the homeschool program and do their full year curriculum schedule. So that's the plan. And then at our co-op, she's also doing I see all this DQ, like people are talking about Don Quixote as DQ, and then people are talking about M&M Blizzards. I want an M&M Blizzard. Or maybe no one said M&M. Maybe someone said some Blizzard, and I said M&M, because that's always what I order. Okay, so then the other things she's doing at co-op are like a theology video class and a theology book club that she's doing with some friends there. You can tell our co-ops are huge for us, right? In fact, her entire high school freshman year has been based off of what they're offering at co-op. She's also taken a personal finance for teens class. I'm not teaching her anything in particular. Really, I'm going to be her support. I'm going to be her conversationalist. I'm going to be her cheerleader. And I'm going to talk about the books she's reading with her because I can't help it. Even if I haven't read them. That's where that 5 questions guide that Courtney put in the comments, maybe she'll put it back in there, comes in handy. Because I really find that some of our best conversations about books happen when my kids have read a book and I haven't. Because they don't have that whole stigma of like moms asking me questions about the book because I'm doing comprehension questions, or because she wants me to prove that I read it, because they know I don't actually know the answer. They're very open-ended questions that just open up a conversation about it. And because I haven't read the book, I'm coming from a place of curiosity and interest instead of the teacher wanting to know that you got what you're supposed to get from that book. And so even if I don't read a single book that she's reading for her high school classes, I definitely plan on making time and space to have conversations about what she's reading with her. The other thing that we're doing with a co-op, and this isn't really at co-op, this is a small collection of friends that will come to my house once a week to do logic. All of my kids will be taking this. This is The Art of Argument by Classical Academic Press. My friend Angela, whose kids have all graduated, is like a blessing from heaven to all of us. And she comes and she teaches our kids. Last year she did a humanities type class, and this year she's going to teach logic. And this is just perfect. I think it will dovetail really nicely with our American culture and election, conversation, current events kind of studies. And this is not high school credit level class, but it's totally worth her time. And so she's going to be doing that as well. Yes. So Dawn asked, they take classes at co-op and then do self-independent study the rest of the week. Yeah, I would say our curriculum is basically based on 3 big chunks. What they get at co-op, our whole family learning during morning time, and then their independent work. And their independent work is a combination of their homework for co-op and anything they can do on their own. Typing practice, I'm looking to see what else. Their math homework, grammar, any kind of grammar books generally they kind of do on their own. We'll get into that in a minute. For younger kids, if they're doing like handwriting practice, that's what their independent work is. Yeah, it's like a hybrid model. Hey, yeah, totally. Okay, so I think that's it for, and she'll be taking piano. I think that's it for 9th grade. So it's not that overwhelming or intimidating, right? Especially because I really want to see myself and as a homeschooling mom, I don't feel any pressure whatsoever to teach my children everything. I don't want to feel that pressure. I don't think that's where my time and energy as a homeschooling mom is best placed. I think the best place for it is for me to really see my responsibility is helping my children encounter wonder and delight and grow good, strong study skills. And we do that sometimes by me teaching them, and sometimes by me hooking them up with good co-op classes or tutors, and me being their cheerleader and their biggest cheerleader, really, and their biggest support. So they always know they can come to me when they need help. They always know they can come to me when they have a question, but I don't feel the pressure of being like this grand depositor of information and wisdom. Thank goodness. Okay. Oh, you can't find the Finishing Well book. Who is the author? Kim Baumgartel. Baumgaertel. It's a self-published book that was on Amazon. That I ordered it on Amazon anyway. Yeah. And again, if you can't find it, Janice Campbell has one at Everyday Education, and Lee Binns has a million resources for homeschooling high schoolers. Okay, so let's move on to the 7th grader. And this is the other thing, is that my kids are so different. And so, like, my 9th grader is a very self-motivated. She is probably, well, no, not probably. She is more self-motivated than I am. And she's very disciplined. And so I'm going to be singing a whole different song in approximately 3 years when my son gets to high school. And so it's just, like, you have to take whatever plans I have and, like, just put them through that, like huge, big piece of, you know, I was going to say with a grain of salt. And then I'm like, a big piece of rock salt. And then I just got this weird image in my head. I'll just keep moving on. Basically, remember that, like, my kids are different than your kids, and they're all at different stages. So my 9th grader is very independent, and she's very capable. And so the way I'm homeschooling her is going to look different than it will even for my next child, who's just 2 years behind her. So she's my next child is Allison. She's a 7th grader. She's also working with a tutor for math. So she's doing pre-algebra using Saxon and a tutor. And then at co-op, she is studying British Middle Ages. I think they're using something called Heritage History. I don't really know a whole lot about that curriculum. I know that they have to do a whole bunch of reading. Again, here's one of the things you have to know if you decide to use a co-op the way I use it, which is to take things off your plate. You don't get a whole lot of vote, right? At the beginning of using co-ops, that was a struggle for me because I think as homeschooling moms, we can kind of tend to be a little bit of controlling. And we have these beautiful visions of the kind of history we want our kids to learn, or that they all are in the same, learning the same topics together, or the same, like a certain way we want classes to be presented to them. And what I have found is that if I'm going to be using a co-op to outsource and to kind of take things off my plate, then I have to be willing to compromise sometimes, depending on whether it's exactly the curriculum I would use, or the method I would choose, or the books that I would choose. I take on the role of cheerleader for my child rather than choosing exactly what curriculum they're using. So they're doing British history for British Middle Ages, for about half the year. She's also doing botany at co-op. She's taking a half a year of Spanish at co-op. And they're doing something called RC Challenge, which is Roman Catholic Challenge, which is like I think it's going to be like Jeopardy with like questions about the faith and stuff. She's excited about it. That's what she's doing at co-op. They're using IEW for writing at co-op. So I won't be teaching her writing this year, which is a change from last year. So what she's doing at home, then, there's not very many things. So when I have my little chart here and I'm like, okay, I fill it in with what's happening at co-op. I know you can't read that because it's behind, so I won't even hold it up very long. But when I filled it in with what they're doing at co-op, there wasn't very many spots left for me to fill in. I realized that she needs a little bit of spelling. So what we're using is Phonetic Zoo. Oh, I meant to grab that and I left it downstairs. She's going to be using Phonetic Zoo, which is put out by IEW at IEW.com. I like this spelling program because it's completely independent. And so it gets done because I can put it on their checklist and they don't have to rely on me in order to get to it each day. So she's going to be doing a year of Phonetic Zoo for spelling. And then I'm also getting her the Easy Grammar Ultimate. It's actually an 8th grade book. I meant to grab that too. I apologize. It's not the big Easy Grammar program because that's really big. It's not the Daily Grams. It's called like Easy Grammar Ultimate. It's basically if you're going to teach your child grammar, not just review grammar, but if you want to have them go through teaching concepts in like 10 minutes a day when they're about middle school level. And I like that because I don't do grammar. I'm going to get cut out of the classical club by the time I'm done with this this Facebook Live, by the way, for a couple of reasons, which I'll get into in a minute. I don't teach grammar to younger kids. I teach them like a year. I use like a workbook, like Easy Grammar Ultimate for a year or two in middle school, and then they're fine. And we read a ton, and they seem to be fine. So that's what she's doing at home. I feel like there's something else she's doing at home. She's also going to be sitting in the logic class, Art of Argument. She's taking piano lessons. And then we like to use Typing Instructor. I don't know if you're familiar with Typing Instructor, but we like to use that. They'll just do 10 or 15 minutes of Typing Instructor every day, the kids that are not fluently typing yet. My high schooler now has been doing it for a couple of years, so she's a pretty quick typer, so I took that off her list. And I also got her a cursive book because okay, does this happen to you where you realize you have an entire child that never got something? And you're like, oh, I never taught you cursive, ever. Like, I don't know how that fell through it did. So I went to Memoria Press yesterday and got a book called Teach Yourself Cursive, which is for kids older than 5th grade who haven't learned cursive yet, and she's going to do that, like 10 minutes a day. That's the plan. Okay, I think that's it for my 7th grader. You'll notice a lack of Latin. We're not doing Latin because she's doing Spanish at co-op, and I think more than one foreign language is probably more than we'll actually get to. She really wants to learn Greek, and so they're only doing a semester of Spanish at co-op. It's possible that we will go ahead and buy Classical Academic Press's Greek program, but I am not doing that yet because I want to see if it's actually feasible. I would much rather err on the side of needing to order it later because we have time to fill than ordering too much curriculum or putting too much on our plate and then getting overwhelmed by something like Greek that could be not done, frankly. So we're not doing Latin, and she's doing Spanish instead, which is the other reason I'm going to get kicked out of the classical club. Okay. 5th and 6th grade, that's my son. Now I say 5th and 6th grade because it kind of depends on what subject we're talking about. So here's where we have like different learning styles and developmental ages and stages kind of stuff. So he's not working with the math tutor. I'll be teaching him math. And Saxon was not a very good fit for him, and so we are going to be using Matthew C. And I have to tell you really quick, I met Steve to me when I was speaking at one of the great homeschool conventions this last year, and I was kind of struggling around with like, what are we going to do for math? What we've been doing hasn't been working great, and I think I need to change things. So I went over to talk to Steve DeMee at Matthew C. and just find out what he thought. So I'll tell you, I walked up to him and said, okay, I'm struggling a little bit with math with my son, and he goes, okay, tell me what he can do. So I started listing the things that he could do. And Steve takes me over and shows me which Matthew C. book. He goes, I'd start about halfway through here. Just do it till he's mastered it. Like, don't make him do every worksheet. Just till he gets it. And then you can move on to the next book. I walked away after this whole conversation with Steve realizing he never once asked me how old my son was. Like, never once. He didn't ask. And I realized that he doesn't need to know that. For Steve, it doesn't matter how old my child is. It matters what he knows. What he asked was, what does your son know? And that's all you need to know because that's all you need to teach is the next step, right? And that was very freeing for me, and it made me adore him Steve to me and the Matthew C program, because I realized, of course, it doesn't matter how old my child is or what grade he's supposed to be in for math, according to the local public school. What matters is what he knows and what the next step is. And so that's where we're at. And so we'll be using Matthew C with him. Right now, I will say we are doing this. We are supposed to be doing this for the summer, according to me, but we haven't been very consistent because of yours truly. But this is the Simply Charlotte Mason Your Business Math series. And basically what happens is they can pick a sports store, a pet store, or a bookstore, and they start with $10,000, and they have to order their own inventory, and then fulfill orders for customers, and calculate tax. And there's all of this kind of multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition work that's done in an entrepreneur, and it totally was right up my son's alley because he's really into that entrepreneurial model. So we got this, and it's about, I think they say it can be about 3 months worth. And yes, Kristen, we can link that. Courtney, would you mind putting a link to the Simply Charlotte Mason Your Business Math series here? And by the way, we will collect the links from this video, and at sarahmckenzie.tv, where you'll find the replay of this, we'll also have the links to everything I'm mentioning, because it's kind of torture, right, for me to throw things out, especially if you're busy like folding laundry and you can't write them down. So we did not get as far in this program this summer as I had intended, and so we'll start the year finishing this before we dive into Matthew C. We'll just do that every day. I really love Simply Charlotte Mason. They make amazing products, and I'm really happy with that one. So that's what he's doing for math. At one of our co-ops, he'll be doing IEW, and he's going to need a lot of hand-holding with that, I think, and so I plan to have some, during our one-on-one time every day, to be working on his homework for that. That's only a semester at our co-op, so the other semester we'll be using Classical Academic Press's Writing and Rhetoric series, which I should have brought up here too. It's a fantastic writing program. I really love a writing program that's not the same thing every day, that you don't do the same processes every day, that's fun, but is solid, and that's open and go. And that's a really tall order to have all those. But Writing and Rhetoric from Classical Academic Press is by far my favorite to meet those criteria. And so for the semester that he's not doing IEW, which is spring semester, that he's not doing IEW at co-op, we'll be using Writing and Rhetoric from Classical Academic Press. I love that program because the way I do it is we don't get through a certain amount of lessons in a certain amount of time. I turn on the timer and say we're going to do writing for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever, and we just open it where we left off, and we go for 20 or 30 minutes, and we put a sticky note in when the timer goes off, and we're done for the day. And you can do that with that program really, really wonderfully. So that's what we're going to use. He'll be still working through All About Spelling, which I usually like to work through All About Spelling all the way until they're through level 3, which we're not yet. So it's like that whole doing the next thing, right? It doesn't matter where they're supposed to be, it matters where they are, and take them to the next step. That's what we're doing. And we'll do that until we get through All About Spelling 3, and then I move my kids to Phonetic Zoo from IEW. And I only do that until I start noticing that their spelling's pretty good in their writing, and then we ditch spelling altogether. Oh, Michelle, the typing instructor we use, we've used both. It depends on the child. My son used the one for kids for a while. My oldest daughter did not like that one. It was a little too cartoony for her, so we went and got her the adult one. They moved to the adult one pretty quickly, so I think you could start there. But if you have a child that likes to be motivated by like cute characters and stuff, then this kids one is fantastic. Okay. We're also, one of the things I've noticed with him is that I need to make sure that when he's reading on his own that he's reading and understanding what he's reading. I've noticed sometimes when he tells me about stories he's read that maybe that's not happening as well as I thought. So what we're doing right now is we're reading The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place by Mary Rose Wood, which is completely delightful. It's taking us a long time to read it because it's summer. But in a school year, what I plan to do is read about 10 minutes a day together. And what I did is I got 2 copies of the same book, and he reads it, he looks at the book, and I read it aloud to him. And just the point of that is for 10 minutes every day for him to be watching the words while I'm reading it aloud, so he's getting that language pattern or auditory language pattern into his ears, but he's also seeing what it looks like on the page, and hopefully that will start to translate into better comprehension on his own. Why do I switch to Phonetic Zoo? That's a great question. Because All About Spelling is a fantastic program, and it requires mom every day. And that's a really hard thing to do when you have multiple students at multiple levels. And so I try to get to a program that depends less on mom as quickly as possible. And I don't think it can be done really well with spelling until they get to about that level of All About Spelling 3. But then once they're there, they can use Phonetic Zoo, and that can kind of take over. And Phonetic Zoo, like I said, I don't know if I said this, it's a CD that they listen to. They might offer it on MP3 now, I would assume. And they do work on it on their own, and you just check on it. Whereas All About Spelling requires you to sit with your child every single time you work through it. That's why we moved from All About Spelling to Phonetic Zoo. If you're doing fine with that, if you have no problem sitting with your kids, if maybe you have fewer students at different levels, then I would stick with All About Spelling. It's a fantastic program. Marie Ripple has All About Spelling and All About Reading are incredible programs, and I would highly recommend them. But if you need to free up mama time, then that's what I need to do. Okay, so 5th grade, I told you about math, writing. He's doing Greek history at co-op. I don't know what they're using. I have no. So this is me letting go. I don't know what they're using. I have no idea. They're gonna do Greek history, and that will be great. I'm sure he'll enjoy that. We'll probably grab some. We have lots of Greek history books at home, like the Dallaires myths, and I think we have some books by Mary Pope Osborne, maybe about Greek history and like Greek gods and stuff. Anyway, I'll have some great books on the shelf for him to read for fun, but really I'll just let the co-op do what they do. And he's also doing astronomy there, and they use Apologia for astronomy. And he'll be doing typing instructor, just like the 7th grader. And we'll be sitting in, of course, on our morning time American culture class. And then I plan to work through Faith and Life with him as well, because I think we need a little more catechism there that I haven't done with him as much as I did with the girls when they were younger. So we're going to be doing a little bit of Faith and Life, which is just a Catholic catechism type book that we'll read together. No workbook, just read together. Oh, Courtney says Alakai Greek myths is a must. Okay, I don't think we have that one. I'll make sure I get it. Dawn, Incorrigible Children could totally be read with younger than 5th grade. It's super perfect, I think, for my 5th grade son, but 3rd grader totally would enjoy it. It's very Mary Poppins-ish. It's very great. It's fantastic. Okay. I think that is all I was going to tell you about. I'm going to stay on here just for like a few more minutes. My husband is actually wanting to go on a hike, and so he's waiting for me, so I'm not going to stay on too much longer. But I would love to answer any questions that you might have that I haven't answered yet. So I'll take a few of those. What do we use for math? My oldest 2 daughters will use Saxon. They use that with the tutor. My 5th grader, 6th grader uses math. Will use Matthew C this year. We've used a lot of math programs. One of my biggest regrets about math over the last decade I've been homeschooling, or dozen years I've been homeschooling, is switching programs too often, because that's where we end up kind of dropping things and getting stressed. And so I wish I hadn't switched programs as much as I had. I wish I had just picked one and kind of stuck with it. Even when it got hard, just kind of either figured out if my husband could help me, if we could hire a tutor, if we could add something else without just ditching math programs and jumping around. All About Spelling, would you start on level 1? Yes. Even if you have an older child, start on level 1. They'll fly through it, but there's some important rules that they learn that and like things that they need to memorize when they're doing level 1. They'll go through it really fast if they're older, but that's a really important step not to miss. And then that's what I do with my oldest daughter. I'm trying to remember how old she was when I started that. I can't really remember, but we flew through levels 1 through 3, I think, in a year, and then she was good to go. Actually, she did Phonetic Zoo for maybe 6 months, and then I realized she's fine. Her spelling is fantastic. So then she was able to drop spelling, I think, in 6th grade. Okay. Yep, I start Phonetic Zoo at level A always. I always think it's helpful to start, even if it's easy, a little easy for them, especially when you're using a new program. It's helpful to give them something a little easy. It's nice, it's pleasurable. Then they kind of associate that work with delight and pleasure. And when it gets harder, it doesn't feel like, oh, we started this program and it's such a slog, which has happened with us in other, subjects that kind of taint whether or not that subject is ever approached with delight again. Have I chosen my read-alouds for the year? Oh, that's a great question, and that's something I meant to talk about. Kind of. So here's how I do what I do with read-alouds, because this is the fun part, right? So yes, for American culture, we're going to be reading through the books in the Beautiful Feet Modern American study. Again, we are not reading them all out loud. We are not even going to read all of them. We're just going to read some of them. And I'm going to go through and pick a few that look especially fun to read out loud and read those. But as for fun read-alouds or other read-alouds, I will like to pick maybe 3 or 4 for the year ahead of time that I know I've been wanting to read. And then leave the rest to spontaneous finds, because especially in our Read Aloud Revival community, there's so many wonderful book recommendations all the time that if I picked all of our Read Alouds for a year, it would feel frustrating to me when I'd find, serendipitously run across this great title and we don't have time or room in our schedule to read it. So a couple that I know I want to read this year. I know I want to read the Father Brown Reader 2. I love Father Brown. I'm a huge Chesterton fan. So we've read out loud Father Brown Reader 1, but we haven't read this one out loud yet. So we'll be reading this out loud. I know I want to read The Chestrioke, which was given to be by Raimi at one of the Wild and Free conferences by Kate Sarity. And I very much want to read this one out loud. I know that I want to read aloud Andrew Peterson's next Wingfeather book, which is North or Be Eaten. The second one, I'm pretty sure we're going to want to read the third one. That's what everybody tells me. So that's about all I've chosen ahead of time. I feel like there was a classic back here too that I wanted to read, but I can't remember which one it was. But basically, like, I want to leave a lot of room in my schedule so that if someone tells me, oh my goodness, Sarah, you have to read this with your kids, then I can. Oh, how do I sort and keep my bookshelf straight? I don't. You don't want to take my advice. They're not. Oh, back behind me, this isn't my bedroom. So these are like my, if you're talking about these, it's because they're my books. But the bookshelves that are down with the family are totally not organized. I'm the last person to ask you about that. It's terrible. Like, even just to find my my books for this Facebook Live, it took me a little while. That's just the way it is. Okay, trying to start homeschooling. My 6th grade daughter is not wanting to homeschool. Yes, if you have a child who you're just trying to start homeschooling with, who's coming home from school, I think it's probably important to really focus on the relationship more than the academics at first. I mean, always, actually, but especially right when you're taking a child out of school, and especially if you're encountering some resistance about that. There's a couple of things you can do to make that a smoother transition. One is to think through, what would she like to learn just because she would like to learn it. If that happens to be, if she's really into horses, then Beautiful Feet has a great horse study that you could do. If it's cake decorating, taking a cake decorating class at Michael's or wherever your local place is. If she wants to learn how to sew or, some draw, to putting her in drawing classes. It doesn't even matter if it counts for academic credit, but I would make time and space for her to learn something that really ignites her, because that's the whole framework you really want to build on with homeschooling, is helping your child become an interested, engaged learner. And sometimes they have to be a little deschooled before they can do that well. The other thing I would plan is Just Because We Can days. I would do this about every 6 to 8 weeks in your homeschool. Make sure that you set aside time and a whole day where you're doing nothing but enjoying your child. Going on a hike, going bowling, going to the movies, going to eat ice cream for lunch. Something that you get to do just because you can, just because you're homeschooling. Not something that's going to be edifying or enriching to your homeschool curriculum, nothing that you can tick off a list or will be super impressive to anyone, but just as a way to remind yourself and your kids that you enjoy them and that you love spending time with them. Those are probably especially important when you're deschooling your children from a public school or a private school and bringing them home. That even my kids have never been to school, and I find them tremendously important, especially to remind myself that I actually really do like my children and I actually really do like homeschooling, which we don't always remember, right? So, yeah. Okay, and I will answer just a couple more really quick. So what do I recommend for Latin? I always recommend Classical Academic Press. I love their Latin program. Again, we're not doing Latin this school year, but if I was, I'd be using Classical Academic Press. I would use Song School Latin to start Latin all the way up through 4th or 5th grade. So I would ignore the age recommendations that are on the website or in the catalog. I'm very familiar with those products. I would use Song School for all the way up to 4th or 5th grade before I started Latin for Children A. I always think it's a really great idea to start a little bit easier and make sure that whole delight connection is made especially a hard Latin is not easy, and so you want that delight connection to be really strong, and Song School Latin is like top notch for that. Sorry, I might make sure I got to. Best method for listening to audiobooks in the car. Yeah, I would download to the phone. We have a it's actually the size of a 15-passenger van, and there's like not a great way for us to listen to audiobooks in the car, so we're not doing that much these days. But when we had a minivan, totally downloading books to your phone. The Audible app, if Audible is a fantastic resource for us. We love Audible. Also, the LibriVox app has tons of free good audio. And at the readaloudrevival.com, we have assembled a list of our favorite LibriVox recordings, our favorite narrators and stories that are really well done, because some of them are a lot better done than others. And you can get that for free. All you have to do is go to rarbooklist.com, and then we'll send you that list along with our other Read Aloud lists. But that LibriVox list is included there, and it will give you a list of all of our favorite narrators and books. And you can just listen to those right on your app. So I'm going to let you all go. I'm going to go kiss my husband before he goes on his hike. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are the best, and I hope you have a wonderful day.